Hi there, I care and you matter. I'm Shannon and welcome to my channel. Specifically, welcome to my writing journey. I'm going to start a new series of videos that are going to be put out once a week, and they're going to be specific to my writing process, my writing journey. And so in this first video, I'm going to give you a little peek into how I started, where I started from, and what I did to actually get the ball rolling. First of all, I should give you a little bit of my background. I am a former classroom teacher. I have a double bachelor's degree in early childhood education and elementary education, as well as experience both in the classroom and as an administrator. And for the last 15 years, I actually had to leave the classroom because we adopted a little boy, well, who's no longer a little boy, but we did not know he had special needs. That didn't become apparent until he actually was in our home. And so I had to leave the classroom in order to take care of him. And we still needed my income. So at that point, I became a curriculum writer. And I've been doing that for the past 15 years. And I am both traditionally, but predominantly self-published. My first book that was published by Alpha, which is an imprint of Penguin, is a nonfiction book, creative personal finance. And truth be told, I'm not proud of this book. That's a whole nother story in and of itself. But I share this simply because that I do have some experience with traditional publishing, and through that experience, I discovered it was not for me. And as many challenges as there are for the self-publisher or independent publishing, there are a lot of opportunities to be had there. Specifically, you are in charge of your own content. You get to determine your own deadlines, and you have full creative control, which is what I really found challenging about this. I was actually approached. This is the early 2000s, and I was running a pretty successful website called Making by Savings, which was essentially how to stretch your dollar in creative ways in order to make the two proverbial ends meet. And a agent reached out to me because of my platform and asked, hey, can you write this book for us? I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay, that sounds great. I was excited about it, right? That was totally my jam. What is it? The necessity is the mother of invention. And with two kids at home, I needed to find a way to make those two ends meet. And I had created a community of like-minded people who were also trying to embrace that challenge and that opportunity. And so I was excited to write this book. However, in the end, long story short, this is not my book. I was told what to write. And in fact, a lot of it was rewritten on my behalf. And so that was really disappointing. And so fast forward several years later, and I got really burnt out as a primary caregiver to our son with so many special needs. That's another story in and of itself. But I was becoming really worn down, and I was looking for help. I was seeing counselors, therapists, and they weren't giving me the kind of concrete, specific help that I needed. So what did I do? I tried to create things that would help myself. I knew journaling would help me, but I didn't know where to start. And every journaling tool and resource I found out there, I found incredibly overwhelming. And I had so little energy and time to commit to it. So what did I do? I tried to create my own journaling resources. And so that turned into my Etsy shop. I'll put a link to that below. But I also published many of those books and created guides along those kinds of lines to hopefully help others. And all of those books are still, and all those resources are still available on Etsy as printables, as well as many of them are available on Amazon. But those are all nonfiction. And fast forward now, I have two grown men, young men living, my sons, our typically developing son, Nate, our biological son, is 19 and a university student full-time and working. And Mark is still obviously living with us, and he just turned 18. And I realized, for all intents and purposes, I will never be able to be an empty nester. I will always be, in some way, shape, or form. Even if Mark no longer lives with us, I will be helping to care for him and managing his paperwork and all that good stuff. So it dawned on me that something was missing. I needed to be creative and I wanted to write again. And I'm not to toot my own horn, but I'm really good at curriculum writing and I'm really good at expository writing, explanatory writing. Been doing it for 15 years. I better be good at it. That's why I get paid to do. But I wanted to be creative and I didn't know how to do that. So I thought back about how much I really missed teaching in the classroom. And what did I miss most about that? I missed telling stories. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to try my hand at writing fiction. I'm going to try my hand at writing for the kids that I spent the most amount of time in the classroom with, the ones that I really enjoyed teaching the most. And I have experienced teaching preschool all the way up to 8th grade. At one point, I was even an art teacher, teaching kindergarten all the way through 8th grade, coming up with all the curriculum and teaching 3 to 4 different grade levels every single week. I loved it. But my favorite was middle grade. I loved those kids. And so I thought, I'm gonna try my hand at doing that. And I'm going to go all in and I'm going to self-publish. Now, probably one of the best things I've done for myself is keeping my expectations low. Do I want to make money from this? Absolutely. Do I expect to make a ton of money from this? No. But it's a fun, creative outlet for me, and I love it. There's something really special about seeing a book, a printed book. I am an analog aficionado. You will have to tear my paper books out of my hands because I will not give them up. I embrace technology, but there is just something about the printed book that has my heart and my head and will always be in my hand. In my hands. And so the idea of seeing your name on a printed book is just so exciting. So exciting. For other people, it might be seeing your book in a bookstore. And yeah, I gotta say, it was fun to do an author signing in Barnes & Noble. It was exciting because the manager told me that was the first time they ever had an author sell out of all their books that they had in stock. So yeah, that was exciting. But I don't have to do that again. I would be just as excited, selling my books online through Amazon. And I haven't decided if I'm going to go wide or deep yet. I don't know if I'm going to go deep in the Amazon ecosphere, the KDP, or if I'm going to go wide. Not there yet. Haven't made that decision. I'm still at the beginning process. And so I want to share a little bit about where I started. Now you know why and what I am writing middle grade fiction. And why? That's because I have experience. I know those kids. I have some insight into what they need to be entertained. I have insight into how to make a series of middle grade fiction books useful to teachers and parents. And I feel like that's an asset to me. Because when you self-publish, you have to be marketing your book yourself. Now, don't be fooled. Even when you are traditionally published, they might do a few things to help you market your book. They might, get you on some radio talk shows. They might get you in for book signings. But you are expected to do the vast majority of marketing on your own as well. So you're going to have to do that whether you're self-published or traditionally published. So, don't let that, make you worried about being independently published. But where do you start? The first thing I did is I went to a local thrift store and it's been years since I've been in the classroom, so I wanted to read some books that are current to that particular category that I want to write for. And so I went to my local thrift store and I bought a bunch. And my husband and I really enjoyed as kids, and I think they're still pretty popular too, the Bunnicula series by James Howe. So I bought a couple of those, and I've been rereading those. I've reread some Roald Dahl books. Though I'm going to be honest, this might be a really unpopular opinion. I did not care for them. Maybe they didn't age well. I don't know. I reread Harry Potter, A House with a Clock in Its Walls. I mean, just a ton of books. But let me tell you, I didn't just read them. I did something else. One, I went through and tried to diagram the story. Some stories I liked better than others, and I wanted to know why. I dissected them. I tried to separate them into the 3-act story structure. I picked out what I felt worked, what didn't work. And one other thing that I did that I think is key for self-publishers, so this would probably be my biggest takeaway tip, is I looked for books that did not only have a great story, but had good layout, had good cover art, and had good visual breathing room. So what do I mean by that? For example, let me find one of the, let's see, I think I have one in here that's particularly bad. Because the bad books can be just as helpful as books that are really well laid out. Okay, there's a good one. Okay, so this is, and first of all, you should always know mass-produced children's books, paperbacks, mass-produced paperbacks, oh, they are printed on god-awful paper. And so something great about self-publishing, you oftentimes will get better quality paper. So that alone can really make your book look that much better. I don't think I have the worst example here. But some of the kids' books, it was just ridiculous, the size of the text. I mean, we're talking teeny tiny text. Oh, here we go. I'm going to hold this up. This is Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim by Robert C. O'Brien. Now, this is no shame, no harm, no foul to the author. This has nothing to do with the story. At this point, I'm specifically looking at layout. Will you take a look at the size of that text? Now, the margins aren't bad at all. The margins are about 3/4 of an inch all the way around, and I'm looking at it right now, and it's the trim, the cut isn't even straight. Oh, that looks awful. But I'm specifically looking at the size of the font, and I'm looking at the leading, the space in between the lines. It's so, I don't care who you're writing for. I don't care the age. It is so important to know your audience. Know who you're writing for. You're not writing for yourself, right? Because you're hoping to sell books. You're writing for an audience, potential customers. And specifically for me as a middle grade author, middle grade writer, I know I'm going to have to sell to the parents and the teachers and the educators. But ultimately, it's going to be the kids who are hopefully reading these books. And if you are a reluctant reader, or if they are a reluctant reader, and a reluctant reader is somebody who doesn't necessarily want to pick up a book. You've got avid readers, you've got eager readers, but there are a ton of reluctant readers out there. And as a former teacher, I have a real strong heart for those kids. Oh, sorry, I'm going to get off on a little tangent here. But I remember teaching 4th grade, and I intentionally scheduled SSR, silent sustained reading, every day for 15-20 minutes every day after lunch recess, because the kids would come in hot and sweaty, and good luck trying to get them to focus on anything, right? So I used SSR as a good wind down time before we jumped right back into our academic curriculum. But there were so many kids, particularly boys, to be honest with you, who were embarrassed to read books at their level because the books themselves didn't look grown up or as interesting as the books of the higher level readers in my class. And so I worked really hard to find books that had good story, had good meat to them, and they looked older. They looked more sophisticated, more mature. But they were at a lower reading level, and they were much more accessible to those readers who might struggle or were reluctant, for lack of a better word. And so I guarantee you, a reluctant reader is not going to pick up a book like this that's laid out like this. I don't care how good the story is. This sea of words would turn any reluctant reader off. So I knew I did not want my book. Now remember, when you self-publish, you have total full control over layout, design, and that doesn't just include the cover. The cover is a huge part, and they say don't judge a book by its cover. Who doesn't do that? When you are scrolling Amazon, what's the first thing you look at? Where does your eye go? Especially nowadays in this, day and age, this onslaught of media. Of course you're going to go to the cover. But you know what? What's inside is important too, is it not? And so I knew that I wanted my interior to be far more accessible and approachable to help even reluctant readers embrace the story and be able to enjoy it. And so I'm going to share my current book with you. So, okay, first of all, I got those books, those used books. I read them. I dissected the story, trying to map it out so I could better because again, I'm not a fiction writer, right? So I had to educate myself. I've watched tons of videos here on YouTube, but I took what I knew or what Amazon told me were best-selling middle grade fiction books, and then I dissected them myself to try and educate myself. Okay, what's out there, what's working, and what's not. And I read a ton of reviews because I wanted to see what are parents and kids looking for nowadays. So that was really helpful. But I looked at the interior of that book again to see what worked, what didn't. And I'm going to show you, I'm not going to show you the cover of my proof because I have finished my first draft. And again, I have never written middle grade fiction before. I'm truly starting from scratch. I'm not starting from scratch in terms of publishing. So I do have a leg up there, but I'm starting from scratch in terms of this particular category and genre, science fiction fantasy. So I have my first printed proof, but I've totally redesigned the cover. But I'm so pleased with the way my interior turned out. I'm going to show you the difference. And in this one, again, I'm going to show you that one. And then you tell me which one you would rather read. There you go. Can we see them side by side? You can see how small the text here in this book is compared to mine. You can see that there's not a great deal more leading or space in between the lines in mine in terms of this one. But the paper quality, fiction generally, whether it be for kids or adults, is generally printed on cream paper. And I think that that's a lot softer on the eyes as well. But when I chose, it was by going and looking at other books. Again, I don't have a lot of money. So I didn't spend a ton of books. I went to my local thrift store, Value Village. Paid maybe $2-3 a pop for these books. But seeing them, and as an adult, if I was struggling to read them, and I'm fairly intelligent, I'm a teacher, of course the kids are likely going to struggle with that kind of layout. And so I used that information to my advantage in order to design the layout of my own book. And so I wanted to, another pet peeve I have is when the text bleeds too far into the gutter here, the seam of the book. I wanted to make sure I allotted for that so that it wouldn't be difficult for kids to read. But I think that's so important to factor in. So if you are a new author or an aspiring author, one of the first things I would suggest is go get some books that are in the same category, style, genre that you want to write. Start dissecting them. Figure out what is it that I like, what is it that I don't like. Read some reviews. Look at the layout, look at the story. If you're writing nonfiction, look at, okay, how does the tone of the author in this book, does it work, does it not work? And just really get some concrete places or concrete ways that you can focus on making your book, your manuscript, that much better. So that's my first tip and little tidbit into my writing journey. I'm going to cut this video off here. I could talk forever, but we'll do that in another video. If you've liked this video, I ask you to pay the fee. What's the fee? Please share me. Consider liking, subscribing, and sharing this video with somebody else who you think also might enjoy this kind of video. Until next time, thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you next time. Bye-bye.